Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Able Contemporary Gallery. I'm Teresa Able, and I am pleased to be here today with Candace Compton Pappas. Thank you, Candace.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks for all of you for coming here. Candace Compton Pappas received a BFA in sculpture from the San Francisco Art Institute in 1973. In the 80s, she immersed herself in the LA Women's Building, participating in performance, installation, and public art. At the age of 45, she moved to Michigan with a young family, where 25 years later, she paints, creates altars, and installations in her studio, which includes the 12 acres of woods that surround her home. And today we're talking about this installation in gallery number 5 called Reckoning. So thank you again.
I have to say, right off the bat, that this has been such a great opportunity because I haven't been able to show all this work formally like this. And I've been working on it for years. And to be able to just come into this beautiful space and set it up, it's just been wonderful.
It's when you and your friend Martha brought the work in and you were carrying it up, and Lauren was helping carrying it up, and just seeing it sitting on the floor in piles, you could tell that it was just the perfect tone, the quality of light, everything. It just really just looked great.
If I had a huge van, I would have big piles of the woods in the studio.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's just great. And I love the space, and I love the way that every artist comes in and transforms it and makes it their own. And this is just another example of just wow. So we had the opening reception last night. People love this show. They just could not stop talking about it. And so we're going to talk about it. And the title of the show is called Reckoning. So I think that's a good place to start. Why is it called Reckoning?
That's a really good question. You know, titling something, paintings, whatever, it's always a challenge for me. So I tend to pick words that are very inclusive. And reckoning is one of those words that is huge. You know, it includes history, it includes future, and primarily includes the present and where you sit in the present in relationship to everything else. So it really grew on me as a word. And I've noticed it's somewhat common now. Like even some of the pieces, in this gallery, a couple of them are called Reckoning. And artists come up to me and say, I have a show, and it's called Reckoning.
Oh.
And I think it has to do with the times we're in.
Yeah.
That it's a really rough time for us. Humans, especially those that care about, the environment, where we're going. And it's hard. I moved to the woods 10 years ago. And the closer I am to the woods, the more acutely I'm aware how painful it is, what we're going to lose, what we're losing. So how do you really deal with the pain and the anxiety and everything? Make art, what's the point of making art? And have it make some kind of sense, primarily for yourself. And so what started to happen is our woods are mainly hickory and oak in Michigan. And there are tremendous amount of invasives, which have done a tremendous amount of damage. The bittersweet, the Asian bittersweet in particular, is just pervasive. There's probably a foot of roots through the whole 12 acres. It's the happiest, most enthusiastic grower ever known. It's just, and these are just a sampling. It's just, so I would go walk through the woods and just get overwhelmed by it. and watch these trees. So I started to take it out.
Okay.
And
And
at
this
first I
is
was
the-
like, don't take it out, it's too much.
And this is the stuff that sort of, it'll grow up and tangle around
Yes,
trees,
yeah.
right?
And it can grow like 60 inches in a day if the circumstances are right. And in that removing of the bittersweet, a lot of different things happened. And it was good talking to you, and it reminded me what transformations, very subtle, very kind of quiet transformations happened for me in relationship to the woods.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I was feeling so proud of myself for taking out the bittersweet. And I was the good, bittersweet bad. I was kind of a hero, on some level in my mind. And I just turned it around, and me and the bittersweet kind of became friends. And I kind of fell in love with it in all its shapes. And so, things are very complicated in a good way because so many different facets of each experience come together in a sense of reckoning and being present and being able to accept what's going on and have a relationship with it. So it's a huge, huge concept. And that's part of what I like about it, is it's so wide open. And the idea of spending, so for a couple of years, I do an hour a day taking out bittersweet. And you don't think about it. You don't think progress. You don't think overwhelmed. You don't think I'm doing good work for the world. You just do it. And it's quiet, and the birds, and I feel like sometimes the bittersweet is just laughing at me in my attempts. You just go through all these things. And what happens, I think, is there's a kind of space to be with it all. And to me, that reckoning included all that.
And, well, one, just as an aside, because I'm picturing this acreage of land and this bittersweet growing so quickly, do you feel like from the time that you started, are you ahead or is the bittersweet ahead?
The bittersweet is so fun. Because you pull it out and it just comes right back.
Yeah.
So then you sort of reckon with Roundup. Okay, do I or don't I? Well, there's no other way. So, and the conservation group, I work with them a little bit on some bittersweet, and they use Roundup. So I got it down. We just, pat it on the cut, and so, but still, so I've cleared a lot, and 2 years you have to go back and clear it again, and you just hope. Well, you don't even hope; you just do it.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a variety of different work in the show, and from what we talked about earlier, the work in this show spans maybe a 6-year period of time.
Yeah, I think that's.
But from what I can tell, it also seems like some of the themes and concepts reach back even further. And I'm very interested in an artist's sort of life and someone who has been an artist for as long as you have been. The first thing I think that might be sort of interesting to talk about is the idea of home, which looms large in your work. And I'm going to read 2 things that you've said. I was born into this world homesick. The search for home has been a constant theme underlying my work. You also have said, I have learned no place is home until we feel at home in ourselves, our bodies, our work, our world. So my question to you is, how long ago did you start thinking about home? And is your idea of home different now? But I also just love this idea of being born homesick.
Yeah.
Sort of. Can
That
you
was
touch
such
on
a
that?
breakthrough.
Yeah.
You write these statements.
Yeah.
And you struggle. So I took a class to get help writing my statement. And this is about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And bingo, I was born homesick. And it was kind of a relief because I always thought of myself as kind of kind of pathetic, you know, kind of the lonely, kind of, you know, where's my home? I don't belong in this family. I never feel like I'm really at home. I always feel like the one out in the corner. So it just kind of turned it around, because the idea of coming into this world homesick, first of all, I love the idea that we enter into the world kind of who we are already. And that we carry maybe centuries of generations of emotions and feelings and experiences. So we really come in with kind of a mission that unbeknownst to ourselves. So to come up with this phrase, and it felt so true that I came into this world homesick, I could relax and no one had to solve it. You know, I didn't have to solve it. It's just kind of who I was. And I think partly that opened up the idea that home is maybe not about belonging. Maybe it's about connection. And being in the woods, I feel like how that has shifted. So I painted lots of houses, lots of houses. Partly because I just love the form of the house. It's just so geometric. And as you can see, my tendency is to be kind of dreamy and kind of haunted. And the house is so crisp and clean. And I just love it, pulling these out of the molds. So I've approached it from all these different ways.
Yeah.
And having this thought that I came into the world homesick almost made me feel at home in the world. Oh, that's my place, you know? And so then that combined with moving to the woods and spending all this time in the woods with the bittersweet, that integrated into just kind of relaxing, understanding that these different connections, like me and the bittersweet, or me and the garlic mustard, or me and the autumn olives, or me and the whatever, creeping Charlie, you know, you name it, and it's gonna come at you. And of course, that's like sort of a human, you know, perspective. But just letting it all be, you know, and you just pick what you can pick, and really understanding that instead of feeling like at home, I feel part of. I mean, I guess that's the same thing, but something shifted.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm articulating it well enough.
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you.
And well, the other thing I thought about is, you know, this house form which you have here, and I love it when you're wearing your house on your head.
I know I did.
It's the most simple, benign house form. It's what children draw. And so when I look at your house forms, it's like it's a child's idea of home, right?
Yes.
And that must be sort of, or if it's not intentional, it means something, because you just said we are who we are when we come into the world.
Yeah.
So you're still that kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, totally.
And so that's just, you know, your idea of what a house is when you're a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something really
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. It's like the basic.
Yeah. Okay, so when I look at this, so I love this series of self-portraits. And we were talking last night with a friend of mine, Shell, about these. And so I heard the two of you, because she also does photography, so you were talking about technical stuff. But so just to tell people here, so you took these pictures of yourself.
So it started out with, so I had a huge pile. So this is the bittersweet greens. So I had a huge pile, and I brought them in the studio. I love bringing stuff inside.
Well, I'm guessing it was just, and now that you said this story about the bittersweet, like it's just because you were feeling overwhelmed by them, right?
Yeah.
And so you were covered in them.
Yeah. So you know how you pick it and you work with it, and then you're sleeping at night, and all you see is bittersweet. All you see are greens, and you're just like, and so I just decided I would take that picture. I just cover myself because we're one. And I just set up my camera, and I took this big pile, you know, on the timer, and I took a big pile and just went, boom. And I just sat there, and it felt so cool because it sort of embraced me. You know, there weren't sharp sticks. It's all very soft, so it can wrap around everything. And it just we just sat there together.
And it whispered in your ear and said, finally, you've given in.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's when we became friends.
Yeah.
So, so I kept the setup. I have, this backdrop paper in my studio and a chair and my camera, and I can just, a Nikon, and I can just do the self-timer. It's like gives you 10 seconds, which is great.
Yeah.
And so if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at my pile of bones, I go, there's something I could take a picture of. So I just kind of immerse myself in what's around me, which is pretty much what I like to do anyway.
Yeah.
So this right here was, so I've worked with cement a lot, and someone on Instagram locally, an environmental activist, mentioned how horrible cement is.
Mm-hmm.
So I went, okay, I've got to stop cement. And that's when I got into clay. And so that's like me in mourning.
Oh.
And like I had a cement hat and one of my cement bowls, and I'm like so sad to notice the veil.
What's so bad?
So I just had what?
What's so bad?
Oh, it's awful. It's
toxic.
Yeah, primarily the process of making it. It's the look it up if you want to have another thing to feel bad about.
It's true.
So, and the dead, how peonies are so great, they only last for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So you gotta, enjoy your peonies when they're all wilted. And then the grass, I make these tables. If you turn the cement over, there's a square recess, so I plant grass. And then when it's totally planted, you can lift it up like a chunk of grass. It's so much fun, so I put it on my head. And then I got into digging up clay and using natural clay, and I loved it. And I tried covering myself. It didn't quite work, so it looks like I'm really anguished, but in reality, I just have clay all over me, and I like it.
I love that picture.
And then this one was about knowing and not knowing. So I've done 2 of them. So it's like knowing too much, iPhones, Google, whatever. We just know too much.
Yeah.
But we really don't know. We don't really know.
Right.
So that's what that was about. And then this, of course, is my houses.
Yeah.
So I kept it set up, and every once in a while, and this happens so much as an artist, I don't know if you experience this as well. You're kind of on a roll with an idea, and everything kind of clicks.
Yeah.
And then a few months go by, and you go, let's do some more. And it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Just I've tried a few other things. And so I think it'll morph into something, because I've always, so much of my work is self-portraiture in a way, and sometimes literally. And I enjoy, looking back at myself that way, kind of playing.
Well, do you feel like that ability to know sort of when it's right, follow the whim of being an artist, like knowing that, because sometimes you can edit yourself. Like you could have said to yourself, this will be silly. I'm not going to take a picture of myself with cement on my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes and being able to follow these crazy thoughts that pop into your head in your studio.
Yeah.
But I feel like, at least for me, I get better at following those things the more mature I am in my studio. I feel like you need a foundation of having been an artist for a long time. I mean, this foundation also of, your craft, how to use your tools.
Right.
You have
Right. Home in your studio.
Yeah, you have an established sort of body of work and train of thought, but then you can trust yourself and just allow your mind to go where it goes, and when it's right. Does that seem true?
I think that is true, but there's another thing that's true, which is, so as a child and an adult, extremely insecure.
Okay.
The one who was always, just didn't know much. I just was a scared kind of young person.
Yeah.
But I always trusted my creative instincts. There was a knowing there.
Yeah.
And I always kind of amazed myself with it. Because here I was just kind of slightly erotically shy, like not talking for a year in third grade, just not knowing how to handle the world, and I just took it on. And so I think maturing for me has been learning how to handle that. But always there has been a comfort and trust and at homeness in myself with art.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of permission or something there that goes beyond that. It's really interesting. And when I do things like this and they click, I'm there.
Well, and I feel like sometimes I can, like when work feels like it clicked and it's there, it has a gravitas to it or something where it feels like it exists outside of the artist and it feels like it always existed.
Yeah.
Does that, and
that makes total sense.
And I feel like this work, it feels that way to me.
Yeah, you're sort of joining a stream.
Yeah.
Of something.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's great. Then let's talk about some others. So photographs. There's a series of paintings. There's 5 really, really gorgeous paintings in the show. And I want to talk technically because a lot of people last night at the opening had questions about how you're getting the surface. And then we can talk about what you meant about them. But they're sort of ethereal, and they're magic, and the animals in them look like they're ghostly. So talk about first how you're getting that surface
technique. So I'm not quite well. When I made a lot of these houses in molds, I made with cement, and there was years ago, like maybe 15 years ago, I painted on one of them and put them outside in Michigan for like 2 or 3 years, and the paint was fine. It never faded, didn't do anything. I thought, this is such a wonderful texture. And I love creating kind of a landscape almost that I get to paint on of texture. It's just, there's something there already, and it's kind of alive. So I've tried putting stuff in paint. I've worked with thickening the paint, and I actually did quite a few small, I would do wood frames and trowel cement, actually concrete in there, and smooth it out in paint. But obviously you couldn't go very big.
Yeah.
So what I have been doing, which actually I'm ready to stop because it's so much work, but it's fun, is I staple gun canvas on the wall, and then I trowel a cement slurry on it.
Oh.
And it's very thin.
And that's what's on these?
Yeah. And often you can kind of see on the top edge of the dog, there's cheesecloth. So I put down slurry cement, put down the cheesecloth, another little layer, and then this is the best part, I can lift the cheesecloth, and it's like a cement piece of paper. It's that thin, and it's so beautiful. So, and then I attach it, adhere it, seal it, and go in with acrylics. And then I mount it on board, mainly so I can travel with it, so it doesn't, it's pretty pliable, it's that thin, and there's enough acrylic around it, plastic, that it's pretty, but it could crack.
Yeah.
So they're not heavy at all, and it's just a nice surface.
Yeah, they're beautiful. The surface is
With
beautiful.
the flex, when you're like just on canvas, it's very moving.
Yeah,
When you're with, so is this more solid, like painting on a?
It really is the same, but I hate the way it bounces when it's stretched on a frame. So I staple gun it to the wall. So I keep it really solid, either by being on a panel or against the wall, because I work it so hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of this work, I sand it down and build it up, and sand it down and build it up. So I just can't have it bouncy. I'm not crazy about canvas, but it's pretty.
Well,
it's
that makes
affordable
sense.
when you go
Yeah.
big.
We talked about this last night. They have a little bit of a feeling of an old fresco. They feel sort of ancient too, and that must be the scraping or the sanding down
the
layer and the layering.
Yeah.
And it's intentional that the animals I mean, because we talked about it, they are they running from something? Are they running to us? Are they frightened? Are they joyful? They're sort of moody. We never actually, we know these animals, like deer and rabbits and, a fox, but they're always active. So when we actually get to see them in our lives in our backyard, we always see them sort of scurrying away, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we catch them sitting.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a woman in here last night. She can call the deer. Remember? Yeah. And the deer come out of the woods. She gives them a little corn. But anyway, that's beside the point.
so
No, I think that's
what was your thought about the animals, though?
I played with that, and I wanted to do animals running, and I really worked on making them running. I had backgrounds went, all blurred, and Martha's in my crate group, and they sort of like, well, you could do this, you could do that, and nothing quite worked. So they really looked like they were running. And once I was in the studio, I was going like, they all look frozen. They look like I've taken a picture of them. And I thought, whatever, it's okay. So I've kind of left them. So that's a really interesting point you brought up, that when you often see them, they're, in fact, this deer, it's almost like it's hopping like a bunny. It's kind of like, its tail is up. But that's how they are when they're running. They're really graceful. And so I have accepted that I've painted animals that are running but are still at the same time.
Yeah. They're great.
Thank you.
And all of these things, it's very different material than the sculptures. The photographs are very different materials. But it has, and then these assemblages of natural objects, it all holds together so well. It seems it's so clearly from the same voice. If you're approaching paintings, or if you're approaching photographs or sculpture, does that creative process seem very different for you, or do you feel like it's a similar way that you start that work?
I will say that the assemblages and the sculptures are more fun.
Okay.
They're more playful. I let myself be more playful. I'll have periods with painting where I'm playful.
Yeah.
But it's not the character. It's paintings I really work on for a long time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm elated, and sometimes I'm like, this is it. This is the last painting I'm ever doing. I give up. I just, And with sculpture, also I've not really formally shown them, or put them in that kind of realm. I've shown them fairs and things, but I don't even price them. It's like, and when Martha and I brought these here, I just had them none of them were what I thought they were going to be. The ones on the wall, they change every time. So there's just a playfulness and a looseness there, which I'm always trying to have with the painting. So it's a little more of a struggle, but it's a worthwhile struggle. I watch myself go through stuff. So that's how they're different, but otherwise, they're really about, grasping what's around you in the best way we can, in the most open way we can. And I want to say one more thing about reckoning.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with getting older as well.
Okay, say more about that.
Coming to terms with, your body changing. You're in the woods and everything that's rotting and wrinkly and smelly is so beautiful. And you just get going, but how, you're watching yourself go through the same thing. So you really, it takes a little bit of training.
Yeah.
To, or brainwashing, to just reckon with age and with getting closer to your own demise.
And has that changed your approach to making art?
I think so.
How so?
I think it's made me more relaxed.
Okay.
And with this show, I had no idea if it was going to come together or not. And there's part of me
you told me that now, not 2 weeks ago.
I I really have to bite my tongue because it's so much fun to complain about, your dilemmas. But I mean, I knew I liked the work.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how it was really going to fit. I had never seen this gallery or this space, so who knows whether it was. I kind of thought, I bet this room is going to be a lot smaller and darker. Well, it's just a beautiful room, and it just kind of embraced the work.
Yeah.
It's just been great. So I forget what we were saying.
Just that reckoning with age and how it makes you go in your studio. And
I'm just
you're different
more
than you were
relaxed.
when you were, say, 25 or 30 or.
Yeah, and I don't feel ambitious anymore in that same way.
Yeah.
I am very pleased with myself.
There's still like a calmness, a serenity in your studio, and you just go in, and that's great.
Yeah. I struggle a lot. I go through the same stuff, but it's shifted.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is I'm pretty happy with what I do.
Yeah.
And so appreciate that I get to do this.
Right.
It's just, and live in the woods.
Yeah. No, it's pretty great. Earlier you said something about, we were talking about the environment and making work, and you said something that I think other artists worry about. You can get overwhelmed by everything happening, especially right now, and think, what's the point of making art? I know what I tell myself, if I come to work and I think, what's the importance of going in my studio, or what's the importance of this, of when there's so many, heavy things going on in the world? Is selling art actually the best use of my time?
Right. Are you contributing?
Yeah, am I contributing to making the world better? I have an answer to this. I'm curious if there's something you tell yourself to get off the ledge.
When I was doing feminist art in the Women's Building, we used to say, or there was this thing where, the culture puts women up on a pedestal, but kind of keeps them in the gutter at the same time. Well, it's the same with artists.
Yeah.
You get put up on a pedestal, but really the culture isn't that into you, unless you're a Rembrandt or something. So I think it's the understanding that art is something so essential that the culture is not necessarily going to appreciate, but which has made our lives so much richer. It's made in every culture, the creation, the hand making, the decorating, the embellishing, the the spears of whatever. They're critical things. And to understand that art is critical, I feel.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, good. That's a good answer.
You can't really have life without it.
No, it's true. Yeah.
We need to create, I think, in so many different ways. It's like my husband, John, has been reading all these historical, the Spartan battles. And there's a lot of kind of odd creativity and drive in there, which I'm seeing in a different way because it's a whole different culture and way of thinking about those things.
Right.
So anyway, I'll stop there.
No, I also hope, and I hope that, because it can be such a heavy time. I mean, one, it's the opposite of the darkness, right? Hopefully it's adding something beautiful and good to the world. And it gives people a moment to come and, they get a break from all of that. They get to sort of be in a place like this, see all this beauty, and then you get to take that vision with you. So it sort of reminds you to be present, and hopefully they'll, someone leaves you, they go back home. Maybe you live in the woods in 3 acres and you go home, and then you look at your 3 and you're grateful. And you're filled with the sort of joy and gratitude, and maybe instead of looking at the bittersweet and being overwhelmed, you think there's some beauty in that. I'm still going to get some around that, but there's some
Yeah, it's, I think experiencing art is so affirming of ourselves.
Yeah.
When you're touched by something, I mean, a kid's drawing, it doesn't matter. When you're touched, it's affirming of your own life in some way. Even when we were talking and you were sharing about being in the woods, and it was just exactly what I experienced.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, then the other, and then we're going to open it up to questions, but there's two things that I've had fresh thoughts about with this conversation. One, the idea of the house being the childhood house, and then you talking about feeling really comfortable in your studio now. And I think that for many of us who are artists, when you're a kid, you also, before anyone's told you if it's good or bad or not to do this or to do that, there's a comfortableness in your creativity and you're not editing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And then it takes us so long to get back to there,
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's good to remember that. It's just, I think it's part of human nature to express, to be there, to be part of, and to voice it, whether it's poetry or music, or it's critical. It's absolutely critical. So,
anybody have any questions for Candace?
What do you do when you go through a dry spell?
Do you go through a dry
I
spell?
go in the woods and pack bittersweet. I don't really have dry spells anymore. It's just, I just don't. It's interesting. It's not like I'm not blocked, like I don't know what to paint, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I think from experience, 40 years, 50 years of doing this, you realize you're going to probably figure it out. So
you just stay in the studio and you
Yeah,
think something will happen if I just stay in here.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Yes.
I want to go back to kind of your work with invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
So in ecology, the prevailing school of thought is invasive species are a lot like cancers, that they take resources from the other things that are trying to live in that environment, and they're competing for sunlight, air, water, all those same things.
The whole thing, yeah.
But there's kind of this new school of thought that is like, well, this has kind of always been happening. We've always had invasive species. We've only just started labeling them as such. And in fact, they're doing kind of, you talk about how amazingly fast this can grow. And we've all had, garlic mustard take over on our garden beds, in the blink of an eye. And there's a new school of thought in ecology where that's actually a good thing because it is trapping more carbon from the environment. And why should we even, how dare we even try to impede that? Because that will be our saving. That could possibly be the thing that helps us out of climate, or helps mitigate the effects of global climate change.
Right.
And I was just wondering if you think about the kind of the complicatedness of labeling something as invasive, and then to it's invasive when it's in your yard, but then when you put it on the pedestal, it's this gorgeous art object.
Yeah.
So because
that's the complexity of what's going on. And I do think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are these beautiful oaks, which if they get to live, I don't know, Is it just human nature? You get attached to something and you want to save it. Or maybe it's female, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And, but I think that's a really good point. And I have a friend who's like, you just gotta let things happen. It's just gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not saying that thinking that whatever. She's saying it because it's, there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Someplace in the universe, there's a reason the bittersweet is here now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to take it out of the context of the human effect.
Right.
That it wouldn't be here without people. It would stay, in Asia.
Yeah. But also
But there would be something else, or the meteor would hit and we'd all die. Or what,
Yeah. But you think about, when, thinking deep historical time, when
Yeah.
the world was Pangea,
Yeah.
when everything, there isn't an invasion there. It is only spreading throughout the continent. And we're kind of headed back to that. If you believe, the theory of tectonic plates, that everything is kind of going to collide again and will once again become one landmass.
Yeah.
Will there be invasion again? Or will it just kind of become something else? Change is the only constant.
I love thinking about that because I love thinking that we just don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know, don't pretend to know. Realize that there's things that are going on in the universe all the time that you just don't know. And I had a thought. It was really interesting. So fascinating.
You're going to remember, but this
Yeah.
reminded me, and I'm going to look at Lauren, who's been talking, because maybe you'll remember. Kelly Hopman, who's an artist we represent and a dear friend, she did this series of paintings that were about words that aren't commonly used. And one of them was the sadness of knowing that you're going to die before you know what the end of the story is. Do you remember what that word was?
I don't remember the word, but I remember the concept. I definitely felt that.
But when you two were just talking about that, I had that, I want to know how it ends. It's not that I even am sad about me as a human, my consciousness not being here, but I want to know how the human story ends. Do we end up doing a good thing? Do the tectonic plate, does what happens? Because,
Plus, it's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
The idea
I want to know.
even the word
Yeah.
is, how do you say it? Tectonic plates. My father was a geologist. I just always loved those words when he would talk about the plates shifting underneath you in the Bay Area. It was so dramatic. And, he'd rather die in dirt from a nuclear war. So he doesn't care if there's an earthquake. So this is the 60s, we were hiding under this. So, yeah.
What about the network underneath trees, the mycelium, and how every tree is connected to their friend?
Isn't that great?
And the communication.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I think that's so fascinating, and mycelium is being used for so many products now.
Is it?
And it's just so interesting when you think they're pulling up that bittersweet, there goes their good friend. That's where I go.
Yeah, no, I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I take out the autumn olive, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
it's right next to a tree, and it's like I bet they're apples.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. The stuff that goes on that we don't see.
Yeah. Another thing that, I don't know if you are all familiar with the book Sapiens. So that's a really fascinating book. And he talks about, through history, wherever people land, they eat up the resources. Whether it's the fish or the wild horses or the mastodon. It's just it's part of such a bigger picture. So
We're the bittersweet.
Yeah.
maybe that's why I feel so strong.
Yeah.
And if I'm remembering correctly, bittersweet's it's an ornamental plant in Asia. It's native, but it's used in ornamental.
Is it?
art. I'm pretty sure.
And
And they're similarly dandelion, another invasive, garlic mustard. Those are culinary herbs. They were brought here because we like to eat them.
Yeah.
We brought this here, whether it was on accident or really on purpose.
Right.
We kind of brought our home with us.
Yeah.
What we're used to eating.
It's so interesting because it's really about how we relate to these things.
Yeah.
Do I feel bad? Or do I just accept? Do I, the whole range of having a relationship with it and what you do, and that's kind of the reckoning. How the reckoning is a word that kind of encompasses that for me. And I like that. I like that there's all different ways of looking at it. And to realize, now trees talk to each other. Well, how come we even thought they didn't? Why did we even think that birds don't have feelings? Or, you know, what was wrong? What's wrong with us? That is surprising information. What has gone wrong in the path of our culture that has led us in another direction, and how can we shift?
Yeah.
So,
Candace, I have a quick question about your process with the paintings. So let's look at the rabbit for a minute. Did you paint that at absolutely last? Or did you paint it and then put stuff over it, take stuff away? Yeah, that's what I figured.
totally. I painted that rabbit maybe 50 times.
Interesting.
Looks like it.
Yeah. That's
It was very detailed. You know, sometimes my intent, like with that deer, my intent was to have it almost not even there. To have it kind of a shadow, like going really fast in the dark. I couldn't help myself. Wanting the deer there, so, you know.
It's trusting and letting it become what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I love that we started talking about reckoning, we ended talking about reckoning, and I think that's a brilliant
And
way to end this.
Great.
Thank you, Candace. This
Thank
is
you.
really. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And Candace,